Well, one of our viewers asked this question for a quick tip. How does one successfully convey the sense of movement? That is, a subject in motion, such as a ball flying through the air or leaves agitated by a gust of wind. Any advice is much appreciated. This will be a really good one to follow up from my former quick tip about action painting. Well, we actually have two kinds of movement or motion that we use in painting. And that's what this is about in painting. One is what we call visual movement. I talk about that from time to time in these quick tips. But then the other one is this where we're simulating or giving the impression of images moving. And that's what this is about. Now, we can boil it down to about four methods that artists use to simulate movement. So we have freeze action, blurring, gesture, and repetition. Now, freeze action has been used for centuries. Winslow Homer, for example, used it here in this painting of these boys playing this game. What we mean by freeze action is that you become aware or visually sensitive to the way images are moving, and you catch one of those movements. You freeze it and put it in the painting. So you can see that here as I pointed out. And Degas used it an awful lot. In fact, it was one of his favorite things to do in all of his paintings with ballet dancers. And we see here, he's frozen the action in this painting. You also see in a lot of his horse racing or his paintings about horses where he does the same thing. So if you look at paintings, when you look at paintings that have people in them or the animals or birds or whatever, look for that. And you will realize that you need to observe, if you want to do that sort of thing, you need to observe the positions of each of those figures, or in case it might be just one, that position they're in. When they're in the process of some sort of action, and you freeze the movement. So that's what we mean by that. There are other ways that artists have used the stop action too, but you can see in this painting, and by the way, I couldn't find the artist for this painting, so just know that I didn't do it. Anyway, for this painting, we have the freeze action where the artist has frozen the horses in position or has captured the image of those horses in this particular position. But there's also something else used here too, and that is the blurring, where we can see here action really causes a kind of blur. And you can show that by creating just some sort of blur, and there are many ways for creating blur. Here, the edges are lost. There are other ways to do that too. And to create the action, and that is to lose an edge like we see here, or to actually blur edges where they are simply blended, like right here. The leg of the horse is almost gone there. We don't see it. And so the action here is, of course, involving other things too, but that is another way. Now, another way is what we see here in this drawing. The action is frozen. In fact, you're going to see in all the action that you see created in paintings, you most likely are going to see the freeze action too, in addition to other ways. But you see here the gesture of the marks helps to add to that activity, or you might say to the speed of the action, and that is gesture. And you can do that in painting too, where you are using your brush in sort of swirls or whatever direction that action might be going. And that seems to be what this artist has done, has captured the movement in several of the what we'd call freeze positions, and but nailed down one position here with the making the images clearer. So there's that. Now there's another one that is more modern, a more modern way, and that is the repetition. So let's take this one away. I believe this is what the person is talking about when by mentioning a ball flying in the air. Now here, this artist has used this repetition where the image of the person is repeated behind the person, and as if it were a really slow motion action. And if you've ever seen something really in slow motion, you might get that feeling that the part of the image is left as the person progresses in space like this, and the parts of the image will be left. And let's look at how that's done, where you see where the person is coming from right back here, and where the person is when the action is frozen right here. And we see these repetitions in different positions. And there's a lot of repetition in here that's communicating that. A more modern interpretation is Nude Descending from a Staircase by Marcel Duchamp. This is done in the early 20th century when the abstraction movement was at its height. And here we can, by the title of the painting, we can read the image of, he says, nude descending from the staircase. But we can see the different positions that the body most likely was taking as the body came down from a staircase. And you can see, when you look for the shapes, you can see that repetition here. And notice also how it gets less clear as it moves into the distance. So that's the way artists will interpret that movement. And it is, you really are getting a more abstract piece when you do that. So let's take this away. And I'm going to give you just a little bit of a clue. But before I do that, when you're looking for how something is done, look for it in terms of what you're looking for, in terms of what's the shape, what the shapes are doing mainly. Or you can look for it in terms of specifics like shape and value and color and that sort of thing, instead of just staring at it and saying, I wonder how that artist did that. So anyway, if you were just remember this or make a note of it, the freeze action, the blurring, the gesture, and the repetition. And sometimes they might all be used together, or in some cases, just maybe one of them, like the freeze action that we've seen for centuries. So I'm going to remove this now. I'm going to show you, give you just a little bit of an idea how to go about this. I think if you're studying something or some way that another painter is handling something, the best way to do it is to analyze what the person is doing, and then you looking at what that artist has done, use a different image, and then try to make that same thing happen by analyzing what's happening here. Now, for this particular one, this particular image, let's see, what I have done is I've cut this image out, cropped it out, and enlarged it just a little bit. Now here, you see what's happening there. Obvious, we know the ball is flying through the air, and we know that by the image here. The guy is reaching as if he has just tossed the ball, and of course it's headed for the goal here. Now, if you just saw that ball flying here, for example, right here, you might read it as suspended in air, but you don't actually read the movement. But this is another way to create the movement, is to put other images in there, like people or animals, something that has an automatic way to move, and then show that person in the position of having just caused that movement. In this case, it would be the movement of the basketball, having you're freezing in action here, to show that is in the air and it's moving through the air that way. Now, if we were to show just the basketball, uh, and like this, where we have the repeated movement, what you want to do there, and I just give just a little bit of a guidance here. I bet you can guess already what you would do. You study the direction of the path that that image would be taking. Now, in this case, obviously, if you remember the painting, she's got a bunch of little dogs there that apparently she's taking for a walk, and they're jerking her around, causing her to move in these different positions. But this one is different. This one would be taking a path from the person's hand up through the air, and probably be in a curved path up through the air and here down into the basketball. Well, you don't, I mean, the basket. You don't need to show all that. You just can pick and choose. Do you want to show the movement as if it's leaving here, or as if it's going here? So I think it might be a good thing to first show the movement, show the image itself, and then show its path. And so in that case, we would show its path in this direction, which may be kind of tricky, but we could do that anyway. So what you would do then, I'll give you just a little bit of a guidance here. I'm just going to give a little bit of a line. So the movement, the path that the ball would be taking would be something like that, wouldn't it? Something like that. So you would position the ball at the end of the path in that case. Always position your image. Let's give that a little bit more roundness. Always position the image at the end of the path. So if the path is this way, you'd position the image here. If the path were this way, you'd position the image here. See, that just makes sense. If the path is a curved, then that's the direction in which you want the echo of the image to go. If the path is straight, then you'd want it to go in a straight path, and that's how you make the images. Now, the ball probably goes up and continues to go up, whereas a person moving might have different positions to change. So that's the next thing to take in consideration. Is the image that's moving, is it moving smoothly, or is it changing positions or changing locations in space, you might say, as it's moving? And this would be easy because this one's changing positions. So then what we would do there is right behind here, and I think put it behind the image rather than front. Right behind here, you would create an image. Let me get just a little bit more paint on the end of that brush to show you this. Okay, now there's another thing to consider here, and that is that on something like the ball, if this is what you're showing, we would see that ball bigger right here than we see it up there, way up there. So you can gauge that however you want to, but this one, the next one that would be kind of an echo image would be, and we want to be able to see a distinction there of those two. But we want to make that one just have partially showing. This could make the ball have the whole ball showing here, and in this case we see it. I'll just sort of create it with a little bit of shadow around the bottom. So this is just a very rough indication there. All right, so it's going that way, and then here, this one, slightly bigger, and then you can put a little echo right behind this one and make it even a little bit bigger as it's coming down. Something kind of like this, and probably not so well defined. A little bit bigger. Let's get that one just a little bit better defined. Probably go up before it comes down. Sort of like that. All right, now that we'll have a little bit of a shadowy indication right behind here, and scoot that on up on this one. Now on one of them, we'll need to start blurring. Have it just a little bit more blurred. Now that doesn't make sense as far as creating the principle of distance. The way to create distance, I got to get this one a little bit lighter right here. But it will indicate kind of a better after image to sort of begin to kind of blur the images together a little bit more. Let's get that just a little bit. There we go. And when you're doing this sort of exercise, I would suggest that you maybe do sort of something like this first to get the sense of it. If you're actually doing this in painting, I would suggest that you create a preliminary drawing first that indicates exactly what you want to happen there, and then we would have one down here as it's leaving. Well, you could stop the action wherever you want it to, but down here I've got kind of a shaky hand today. See, start it about right in this. Now this, and I always sort of just blur that one out. Here's what I'm talking about. I'll show you in just a sec there. Yeah. Now, we'll pull just sort of let that be. I think the best way to do that is with a paper towel and just come down and do that just a little less there. And of course, this line would not be there. That was just that's just a line. This is just a line to indicate the direction of the path that ball would be taking. And just however much you want it to, the first one, a little bit more distinct, just however many echoes you want to have of that, just let it continue to get lighter, and you could have just one down here just that you barely can see. But because where the person, where the man, the person, the boy is, the ball, because it's closer to us, would be bigger, a little bit bigger in size. And then as it moves into distance, it's going to be a little bit smaller in size and get smaller and smaller as it goes into distance. So I think I'll put just a little bit more distinct shown, but we don't want, because if that's in the distance, we wouldn't want to make that too big, too distinct. Just put a little bit of indication of shadow around that ball so that we can show it as the most distinct one of all. So that gives you the idea. So it would continue. Of course, you would have other things around here, but you could expect it to be more abstracted. Remember that. You expect it to be more abstracted, and it might even be fun if you if you had this image doing a similar thing, where the image would be maybe in a more stooped position as he began to toss the ball, and then as he comes up, to be straighter and straighter, and the image get less and less. So you can, once you take that idea, you get the general sense of what needs to happen, then I think you'll find that it's a lot of fun to do. Be sure to view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell, so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianneMize.com, where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.